Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Two important subjects to discuss on today's Another View on Health: the rising cost of prescriptions and the new civil rights division within the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. It's called the Conscience and Religious Freedom Division. It will protect healthcare workers who refuse to perform certain medical services based on their morals or religion. So could you actually be refused care because a doctor or nurse says no on religious grounds? We have three of the most prominent doctors in Hampton Roads as our guests, and you will want to hear what they have to say. Another View on Health is next. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Discussing today's topics from an African American perspective, this is Another View.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Before we get started on our really active show that we have for you today, I want to tell you about the Heart to Heart Sweetheart Gala. This is in support of feeding the hungry and supporting EVMS medical students. Now, it's being put on by Dr. Pat King and Caroline Goodwin Harris, and it is on Saturday, February the 10th at the Sheraton Hotel from 7 until 11 p.m. Tickets are available, and you can call 436-2444 for more information. That's 436-2444. If you don't know, Dr. Pat King is a psychiatrist in the area, very involved in helping particularly minority students to go through medical school, and is very concerned about their being able to pay for it because we know how expensive that is. So they're putting on this Heart to Heart Sweetheart Gala, and proceeds will go to the food bank as well as EVMS medical students. So if you want more information, that's 436-2444. So today's Another View on Health is right up my co-host alley, because cardiologist Dr. Keith Newby loves to discuss healthcare and politics.
There you go.
So we welcome Dr. Newby back to Another View. Hey, Keith, how are you?
All right, and yourself?
I'm doing great. And you brought along two of your friends, dermatologist Dr. Frederick Quarles. Hi, Fred.
How you doing? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. And joining us by phone is Brickhouse Professor of Surgery at Eastern Virginia Medical School, Dr. L.D. Britt. How are you?
I'm doing fine. It's a pleasure to be on.
Oh, it is a pleasure to have the three of you on so much. So, big news. Yes. We started out by, we said, Keith, we were going to talk about prescription drugs, yes, and we are. Yes. But then Health and Human Services has now announced the Conscience and Religious Freedom Division. And this is a part of the Civil Rights Office for Health and Human Services, and basically says that if you are a medical professional and you have an objection to performing a procedure based on moral or religious beliefs, you can file a complaint and they will investigate it and take care of it. So let's listen to a clip first before we start the conversation. This is from Anne-Marie Hudeman, and she is with the Kaiser Health News.
If you're a medical professional who feels that your right to your religious beliefs has been infringed upon in the course of duty, for example, if you're a doctor who you feel has been forced or pressured to perform an abortion and that's against your religion, you can go to this website at the Office for Civil Rights and you can lodge a complaint, where the Office for Civil Rights has now said, we'll investigate those complaints. We'll look into this. We'll have your back and make sure that you aren't being forced to do anything you don't want to do.
Now, the Health and Human Services says that prior to this coming on board, they had about 10 complaints. Since the Trump administration has been in, Dr. Newby, they say they now have 34. Is this a major issue among doctors and among health personnel, first and foremost? And what do you think about it?
Well, as a cardiologist, when I read through the material, and they made mention about feeling pressure from hospital systems, I mean, it just... In my profession, I've never been pressured from a hospital to do a procedure that we felt was inappropriate or not in the patient's best interest. I mean, I've never been questioned. I've never been,
And let's put it in perspective. Now, over the entire 8 years of President Obama administration, there were only 10 complaints.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
And since President Trump has been in administration, there are 34 complaints, and we don't know how legitimate those complaints are. But at the end of the day, they're not trying to. They can't make new laws. This new division is trying to rev up and enforce existing laws. And so if you look at the magnitude of it, it's procedure-based. They're talking about maybe people who don't want to do abortions, people who don't want to do sterilization, assist somebody in obviously terminating his or her life. So it's not a large perspective. I just want to just put the framework there.
Okay.
We're talking about a limited number of complaints, and I'm like Dr. Newby. In my practice, I haven't witnessed or experienced or heard of any healthcare provider being forced to do something. I think they're kicking up a lot of dirt. They certainly cannot. This is not a new law. What they need to, they're trying to enforce existing laws. They can't make their biases law because they have to go through Congress, and you know what sort of problem this administration has going through Congress. So I wanted to put it in perspective so that our audience won't get too alarmed.
Yes, and I think you bring up a very good point, Dr. Britt, because these are laws that were already on the books. But I think the question is, why now? And could this move from the procedure, which is what they keep stressing, that this is supposed to be about the procedure and not about the person?
Patient,
but Dr. Quarles, do you think that at some point we run a slippery slope that it could move over to the patient?
Yes, I think it is a slippery slope, and I agree with everything that's been mentioned. When you have elective procedures, there should be a team of doctors that you can refer a patient to if you're uncomfortable doing something. But I think we're talking about life and death situations where there may be a mother with a pregnant mother who is in the last trimester, and your patient is that woman. So now you have to decide, okay, but you shouldn't have to decide. There's no decision to be made. The Hippocratic Oath basically says we're going to take care of folk no matter what. So I keep it simple, stupid.
And plus, if it's elective, you know what you do. You staff up. If you have somebody who you know doesn't want to do X, then you have the partners do it, or the hospital will have somebody other providers to do it.
Yeah, it's kind of the downside to when you read through this material and where this law states, it's just so broad. And that's where I think the slippery slope comes in, because it really states that based on because you look at it, it says the conscience and religious freedom. Right. So to say if my conscience says I shouldn't do something, and it doesn't qualify the who's as much. I mean, when you read through this information, it doesn't necessarily exclude things. I mean, if they were really finite with it to say, like specifically abortion, they just use abortion as an example.
Yeah,
but they don't say.
But they're moving towards that slippery slope of discriminating.
Exactly.
And think about it, we do have anti-discrimination laws.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not sure they'll be able to go across that line.
Yeah, the unfortunate part about it when you read through this is they're saying, and they made this very clear, they're putting a lot of money. They said they're putting a lot of excess funding into this particular.
Exactly, into this particular office. Yeah. And the stick is that they will remove federal funding from these organizations. Now, the Catholic Church, there's Catholic health care that is offered throughout the country. I want to play a bite that talks about how, and this is from their perspective, how they've been able to handle health care and not do these procedures.
Let's step back again and remember, and many have pointed this out, that the Catholic Church is the largest non-governmental provider of health care in this country, and that includes to the poor and minorities. And they've managed to play that role without providing abortions, without performing sterilizations, without performing euthanasia. So again, I think the question is why, if we then start trying to force those providers and institutions to violate their religious beliefs, are we actually going to be restricting access to health care?
What do you think?
Well, I heard that quote on the podcast, and the response was 80% of the people who are of the Catholic faith don't abide by that. They don't agree with that statement. They want the Catholic Church or the Catholic hospital to be able to provide some of those things. They're not Orthodox Catholics, just like you don't have Orthodox Jews. Mm-hmm. You have Christ-like, you abide by the Bible, but actually most of these folk on who are falling under this umbrella don't even agree with that statement. they still want those kinds of things to
services
be provided by the Catholic hospital.
Well, and it goes back to what Dr. Britt said earlier. I mean, the one thing is in this country you have choices, and if one place is not offering something, you can get anything you want. It's a matter of where. So if I don't feel comfortable with doing something, again, I will say, okay, I may not feel comfortable doing this, but we will provide you at least an option to consider, to get whatever you're trying to get done performed. I mean, when you start getting to the issue, of abortion versus, again, sterilization or some other type of, procedures being done, it just seems to me that that's being used as the example to get people on board with them to agree to this. But this thing is so broad in this description that you can take that, because I could just say, okay, in my religion, we don't treat black people. Because my religion to choose.
And I think that's one of the things that people are concerned about is could it move to that area?
Well, it really can.
There.
Yeah, we can, based on what they're saying and the broad nature of this, because it doesn't specify anything to say, okay, based on my religion is this, and acceptable kind of considered religious faiths, and it doesn't. It just needs to be. I mean, I would be okay with certain things if it were just a little bit more finite in this description.
So it's way too broad for you.
I mean, for
your
me,
perspective now.
That's how it goes down that slippery slope, and I think it's done purposefully that way, so you can start to go down this path.
Dr. Britt, when you were in medical school, when you were taking ethics classes and so forth, was this something that was discussed? How are doctors in particular trained for this?
We knew the Hippocratic Oath. We knew what we were getting into. If you had a inclination of not wanting to, let us say, participate in abortions, you likely probably wouldn't choose OBGYN as a specialty.
Exactly.
And so you would self-select. And so that was not an issue back in the 70s and 80s.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. What do you think about this new Conscious and Religious Freedom Division of the Department of Health and Human Services? 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. I want to play a clip of, again, from 1A, which was a show that airs here on WHRV. Earlier in the week, they were having the same conversation. And here's some of the comments that people had to say about this issue.
Can I refuse to provide blood transfusions? Can I refuse to treat non-Muslims? And Debbie tweeted, scenario, I'm a medical professional and a member of an intolerant, racist, bigoted religious organization. Am I protected when I refuse to treat an interracial child, a black woman, or a gay man with HIV because these things violate my faith? Ashley McGuire, what about that? How do we draw the line between a socially understandable religious objection and flat-out bigotry?
Sure. Well, I know that the focus of this department or sub-department is about protecting doctors, nurses, providers from involvement with procedures. In other words, it's not about the patient, it's about the procedure.
Again, it's not about the patient, it's about the procedure.
It doesn't say that in here. I mean, I don't see
against someone. So we have laws against that.
Yeah.
Discriminating against somebody who's African American and the like, and be in a hate group.
Yeah, it's kind of the unfortunate reality of it is like you have almost, they could say, well, this law conflicts with that law, so I'm protected under this one, so because this is in this kind of finite, direction, because I am a healthcare provider who is not doing it for this is my religious belief. It's not discrimination, it's my religious beliefs. I mean, you can come with all kinds of arguments.
But remember now, they're just drilling down on existing laws.
Yeah.
There's no existing law that discriminates.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I'm just my fear is that people will try to use this
to complain.
Yeah, to complain and to make those things.
Okay, so Dr. Britt, you brought up the point too. You really wanted to keep this in context. So people should not feel that there are healthcare providers across the board, not just doctors, but nurses and physician aides and everybody else aren't just running to to fill out this form to complain because they don't want to do a certain procedure.
Correct. I don't think you're going to have that. I don't think it was going to be the magnitude. I think they just wanted to draw attention. I think that the administration is playing to their base, but I don't think this is going to be a widely embraced concept.
Okay. Let's go to our phones, 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Dr. Cunningham joins us from Virginia Beach. Hi, Dr. Cunningham. You're on the air.
Good afternoon. I'm a local psychiatrist. I'm a graduate from Eastern Virginia Medical School, and I had the distinct honor of having Dr. Britt hand me my white coat in the coat ceremony. Although I think I've disappointed him because I went into psychiatry instead of surgery. But the reason for my call is just I appreciate the conversation, and I too bristle at the notion of any legislation that allows me as a physician to impose my political or religious beliefs on patient care. I think that would be detrimental to any patient, and I would never impose my beliefs. Secondarily, I remember going through residency and medical school, working for some of the local Catholic hospitals, Catholic-funded hospitals, and again, I bristle at the notion of being told I can't talk to women about birth control, and of course I put that admonition aside, and I still would talk to women about birth control against the wishes of the administration. But that's the flip side of that coin. Mm-hmm. So I'll take my answer offline.
Okay, thanks for the call, Dr. Cunningham. We appreciate it. Dr. Quarles?
Another extreme would be, for instance, someone in a federal penitentiary. Someone's a heinous criminal, like the guy who just was convicted up at Michigan State.
For all of this.
He's going to have health care. Religion, Christianity deals with the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. How are we going to pull all that in when we walk in that room? And that guy, when he goes wherever he goes, is going to need health care.
It's called a Hippocratic Oath. When I read the Hippocratic Oath, it didn't say anything about you can't treat a convict, somebody who has committed heinous crimes and all of that. It was pretty clear what you needed to do.
I tell you what the fear is, I think, Dr. Britt, is that even though, I 100% agree with you on that, it's just some of these people that are really far on the right tend to have these kind of, because, example, say there is some procedure that a patient needs that may be a life-saving procedure that they opt not to do for whatever insane reason they don't want to do it. And they say, okay, I'm not going to do it, but based on this law, I can call and get myself protected. And a patient died by that time and is already done, and that granted, and that's an extreme. And I agree with Dr. Britt. I think this is kind of one of those, you see some increase under this new administration because there's been some openness to voice
but
what you may feel. But isn't it important
for taxpayers and to understand that their taxpayer dollars, our taxpayer dollars, are going into this new division based on from 10 complaints over an 8-year period to 34 complaints in 1 year.
Well, we don't even know those 34 valid complaints.
Yeah. The issue, I tell you what I think it boils down to is whether or not, and I don't know the answer to this, is whether or not even though this may be an existing law, is it being altered at all? Because there are certain things you can alter that you may not have to go through Congress for. To alter it to some other.
Well, they were able to set this up, according to the research that I did, based on the executive order that President Trump signed.
Oh, yeah, this doesn't go through Congress. This is executive order thing. And another administration would like to not embrace this.
And also, Trump is notorious for creating distractions. I think this is also going to be another political football that's going to be kicked down into the next midterm elections. And it's created as a distraction from other things as well.
That may be going on. Let's talk to Dan in Richmond. Hi, Dan. You're on the air.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I just wanted to call in with the comment that, it's worth considering that in a lot of rural areas, especially, the main provider of health care, sometimes the only hospital, is run by the Catholic Church. And for low-income women in these areas especially, if the Catholic Church doesn't ordain some kind of service to be provided, whether it be abortion, family planning counseling, or anything else, they don't have other options. So this is just one more attempt by the religious right in this country to backhandedly deny people their rights.
Okay.
Yeah, but if those Catholic churches are getting money from Medicare and Medicaid, that's taxpayer dollars, and that's the public, so they have to serve the public, and they can't berry pick.
So how does that work? I mean, I'm not sure. If they say we aren't going to provide certain services, then do they just not take the federal dollars? Dr. Britt, do you know?
Oh, they could do that, but it'll be hard for them to survive not taking the federal dollars.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I think, that's the part of the legality that I know I'm not as familiar with is, just because I'm not a hospital administrator. So I don't know I've never read the documents that say just like I know as a physician, in my practice, when I sign documents saying, okay, I'm going to accept Medicare or Medicaid, there's certain guidelines that go along with this
that you have to
off
follow.
to.
Right.
What I don't know is how the hospitals work with that, what the documents they're signing and how that impacts on the care.
So, okay, let me ask one last question about this because I know you have to go soon, Dr. Britt. But
I'll stay on because I can't leave you all alone.
Oh, well, that's fabulous. That's awesome. So my question is, in private practice, then how would this affect you all, if at all? I mean, in other words, if you refused as a private practitioner to perform a procedure because you disagree with it, would you still have that same federal protection? Because a lot of this is about the hospital making you do something.
As a private practitioner,
this is Dr.
personally,
Newby.
as a private practitioner, I've never run into an issue because, again, as Dr. Britt and Dr. Quarles have eloquently stated earlier, it's all about the oath we took when we went to this profession. I don't see color at all when I'm when I'm practicing medicine. I really do. I don't see age. I don't see color. I just see a patient that needs help. And my job is I took that oath, and I take it very seriously. And Dr. Britt was one of my main mentors as I was coming up in this profession. And that which I learned from him was always you give everybody your best. The information you learned and what you practice is to the betterment of the patient, and that's it. So all these other discussions are moot as far as I'm concerned because I know what my job and my role is as a physician is to give that person my very best. So all the other stuff is irrelevant to me. If I tell a patient I don't want to do a procedure, it's because there's some health-related issue that I don't want to do that procedure. If I think I'm going to do them more harm than good, then that's the focus.
The reason behind it.
It's never behind a religious belief.
One of my first patients here in the Tidewater area 32 years ago, I was at an urgent care on the weekend. Patient comes in with a laceration on his arm. I'm the only physician in that urgent care. So I'm going to have to suture the guy. I have no problem. I've been to Tuskegee, Alabama, had to work on some folk. This guy had a Confederate flag tattoo right on his arm.
Right by the laceration.
But did you think he said, I don't want this cut and do? I was the guy. I'm the man. I'm going to do this. I wasn't too bad. I went in there, but this is my first time dealing with the Confederate flag. I grew up in Michigan. I'm in D.C., so I didn't grow up with this. So it hit me inside. I'm like, wow, the Confederate flag. But that did not stop me from giving him the best care I could. That's my patient. I'm going to take care of him. I want him to do the best he can. And I think those of us who have gone into the field, that's what we want.
And Ms. Hamley, if indeed there is a patient that you really feel you cannot manage, you can always refer that patient to someone who will do that.
Yeah. And actually, the patient probably would be better off than you. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. AJ joins us from Chesapeake. Hi, AJ. You're on the air.
Good morning. There's one aspect of this that I think has been missed, and that is the protecting of a doctor or a clinic or a hospital from being sued by someone who is turned away. We've already had, a baker sued and lose their business because they didn't want to make a cake for a gay couple. Now, what about the fellow who's transgender, wants to get a sex change? Maybe this is the only clinic within a couple hundred miles. They refuse to do it. And he tries
well, they
to
may
do
be refusing to do it because they don't have the resources and expertise. It takes a lot of expertise and resources in a comprehensive healthcare facility to do a transgender procedure.
So that may not necessarily be because of someone's religious belief or not. They have to look at all the factors.
They may not have the resources.
Now, what if the doctor has those resources, though, and because of his beliefs says, I don't want to do that?
But that doctor then trained to do it. So
exactly.
He or she must be competent.
No, we're not talking about trained to do sex changes. We're just talking about skilled surgeons.
Well, that's different, though. That's different.
The point is you guys are missing the point that a doctor or a clinic or a hospital can be sued. And this is designed to protect them from being sued.
Yeah,
you're saying that the law...
It certainly would not be a substantive suit.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. You can be sued for anything.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You can be sued for anything. You don't even have to have a justifiable reason to file a suit, and it could go through the whole chain of command. You could spend thousands of dollars on legal aid, for a frivolous suit, until it get and they will hear it up to the bitter end while you're spending all this money to protect yourself. So that. This doesn't really necessarily help that per se. I mean, unless they're going to say, okay, if it was found to be, a non-legit lawsuit, we're going to take your financial losses and repay you back, which they're not going to do. So, I mean, I hear what you're saying, AJ. It's just the issue is from our perspective. Is if you are say you're a skilled surgeon, just because you're a skilled surgeon doesn't mean you know how to do a sex change operation. Because it's in cardiology, every cardiologist doesn't know how to do every procedure because we weren't trained to do that. So, but if you're trained to do sex change, why would you not want to do it? Because you're changing somebody from a man to a woman or vice versa.
That's your job.
If that's what you chose to do, and then you're going to turn around and say
you have a religious
or
moral
then why did you go into it in the first place? So
and on a daily basis,
I think the caller might be saying that the patient has some other non-sex change type intervention that needs to be done, that the healthcare provider needs to do it.
Yeah, well, I didn't. If he was saying that, I didn't get that point. If he was saying that, then I understand the
Hang
point.
on just 1 second. If you're just joining us, we're talking about medicine and politics with dermatologist Dr. Fred Quarles, surgeon Dr. L.D. Britt, and my co-host for Another View on Health, cardiologist Dr. Keith Newby. Okay, I want to turn the conversation to prescription drugs because I don't want to run out of time, and that's a big issue that affects everyone. So drugs keep rising.
Yes.
Prescription drugs keep going up. For the first time, I actually have a insurance policy now that requires a deductible before they even start to pay for the drugs. So how...
Ms. Hamley, we have a problem here because in all fairness, I know my colleagues will disagree, I think we have you have 4.4 billion drugs a year being prescribed. That's too many. That's too much.
Yes.
Too
many.
Okay, expound on that, Dr. Britt.
That's too much. I mean, I think it's out of control.
Well, you talk about the doctors prescribing too many medicines for patients.
I'm talking about us.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, the issue, and I think when it comes down to prescription prices, and I agree with you, Dr. Britt, that there are some, and I know I've had to clean up a lot of patients' medicines because they come in with 20,000 things, and I'm like, why are you on this many? 5 different blood pressure pills. If we're not getting it, maybe we need to revamp, and relook at this. The bigger issue I have is these singular people, and I think if we do get that young lady to call her in, I know.
We're trying to reach her.
Okay.
Yeah, we're trying
to reach her. Because one of the things you'll see is, like, an example, and I give a prime example. I had a patient recently who I had to admit for atrial fibrillation. Now, atrial fibrillation is an irregular heart rhythm. One of the medications that we use is a drug called Ticicin, which is an antiarrhythmic drug. Now, interestingly, we had a lot of problems with costs when it was a brand name drug. So the drug just went generic about a year and a half ago. Mm-hmm. So I had a patient come into the hospital, put on Ticicin, not as worried because I said, well, it's generic now. I said, this should be affordable. Mm-hmm. The pharmacist come to me the day she's going to get discharged and say, well, listen, I just wanted to let you know that with her insurance, the generic is going to be $500 a month for that one pill. So, and I'm saying to myself, you talking about the generic? I said, I'm not asking for the brand name. I'm asking for the generic. That is the generic. So in my mind, I'm, okay, hold up, time out. So drug companies' arguments are always, okay, you know, when they have their drug come out, the reason why the cost is so high is the R&D, the
research and
marketing,
development,
and all this stuff.
Yes.
I said, so once the drug's generic, then that goes away. There's no more R&D per se. There's no more marketing per se. So why would that drug be as or more expensive? Because it's not going to cost you that much to make.
So what do you do for a patient like that? What happens?
Well, it depends. I mean, sometimes, you know, we have, there are like drug programs out there that may help them, you know, they get it from either the company, but then that's an act of Congress to get that, because they got to fill out 800, they got to share every aspect of their financial well-being. You know, all their personal information has to be sent to them to get that. So a lot of times I have to find a less expensive drug. I guess the issue that
is the less expensive drug, does that also equate to less effective or not?
Well, it depends. It just depends. But, you know, sometimes yes, sometimes it may not be yes. But I've trained myself to always look for the less expensive drugs first. But this particular lady, she's been through 4 different medications for this particular problem, but she's just so symptomatic. And she was trying to avoid invasive procedures, rightly so, because she's like, if I could take a medicine, I'd rather try all my options first. The issue that I think comes out is when you start talking about this capitalist society that we live in, where does it end? I mean, how much is too much?
But the bottom line is that in the United States, not in Switzerland, not in France, not in UK, not in Japan, the drug manufacturers set their own price.
Exactly, and that's the problem.
We need to change that.
Exactly,
and that's the end point. Our new Secretary of HHS is Alex Azar, was the CEO of Eli Lilly. And so we've put the fox in the hen house.
Yeah, Eli Lilly is a pharmaceutical company for those who
don't know. A pharmaceutical company. Now, as far as generic and pharma, we have pharmacies, we have pharmaceutical companies. Pharmacies are making money. They get a better markup on the generic. And as far as a dermatologist, we prescribe all kinds of medicine for psoriasis, eczema, acne. These medicines are astronomically high. They were only $50 30 years ago. They're $400 now.
But we went wrong, in my opinion, and then I'll leave you all to discuss.
No, because I was going to ask you though, Dr. Britt. I wanted to come back to your point about how we're being prescribed we're prescribing too many medications. Why is that? Why is that?
You have patients coming in my office with a whole bag of the drugs, and some of the drugs are conflict with other drugs.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, that's
so is it just easier just because is it because people are doctor shopping, or is it just easier for a doctor just to stroke?
That will just, in order to move the patients along, they'll give them a prescription.
Okay.
I would surmise that if we had one single payer, like the federal government, the military, VA medical systems, they're not really having this kind of problem. And then you have electronic health records. The prototype for electronic health records are those that are interoperable, that communicate. We have all these I had a particular health record system in my private practice. I've merged with another practice. They don't even communicate. The health record system that I had, in order for me all they have to do is, it's encrypted. All they have to do is push a button and bring all those records together. And that
that a doctor could look and see what you're taking. But they want to charge
$10,000 just to push the button so that they can communicate. But if they could communicate,
the healthcare system.
They have to have one system.
One at a time.
In healthcare.
Yeah.
You need a Steve Jobs of healthcare to overhaul the whole system so that all these prices can come down.
And Dr. Britt is absolutely right. The issue is you also have Bill Gates and you have Steve Jobs. So the problem we run into here is, like, you talk about lobbyists, and how it's like you got the pharmaceutical companies, you got device companies, you got the hospital systems, insurance companies, not so much even the hospital systems as much as the insurance companies. So you have all these divisions that all want to make their money, and there's interplay, but they're separate. So you have to, it's almost like you have to say, and really it has to be, we as a people have to start putting more pressure on Congress. And we're not doing that. I mean, we're really not. We'll sit here, we'll complain all day long, but we're not calling them and putting pressure on them. And we don't vote. We don't do a lot of things that would otherwise direct people to really listen. So, because you think about it, everything's about money.
Yeah.
in this country. Everything is about money, and that's where it boils down.
That's part of the reason why we do these shows and we talk about these issues, because we want to bring this to top of mind for people, because it really does make a difference in terms of your voting or not voting, and the laws that are set for you and how it affects you on a personal basis.
Well, the problem, though, is we'll have this conversation, and it's great conversation. The problem is that what happens tomorrow and the next day, because you'll have this conversation. We'll have this conversation now. We may not have this conversation for 6 months. You know, I mean, we 2 weekers. I mean, after 2 weeks, it's gone. You know, we don't even talk about it.
What's going to happen is, we're in a crisis. Our country does its best when it's in a crisis. There's no way that this is sustainable the way the healthcare system is going now.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
And where we went wrong, and I'll say we tried to make a business out of the care for the sick.
Yeah.
Medicine was never meant to be a true business.
Yeah.
You talk about the business mantra is there is no mission without a margin. You can't say that in healthcare. But we went down that road.
Yeah.
That's
and now
true.
we're suffering.
I agree with that.
Absolutely right.
Okay. Let's talk to Tracy in Newport News. Hi, Tracy. You're on the air.
Hi. Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi.
Hi. I just have a quick question, which is, I was wondering why this opioid crisis is truly a crisis. And my thinking is, which could be flawed, is that doctors would give these opioid prescriptions to more white patients than black patients. And I'll make an example, because when I got my teeth pulled, they gave me some opioid prescriptions with refill. So if you can answer that, that would be great.
Thanks, Tracy, for the call.
Well, I don't know.
What do you think?
Dr. Britt may want to chime in
Dr.
on
Britt,
this.
what do you think, first of all? What do you think about her premise?
I think it's too liberal of prescription writing. I think she's right. Rather than discrimination, it's hard for me to say that, but we created this monster.
Yeah. You know, what I'm finding is not so much, I think it's always been a crisis. You know, I mean, I don't think this is new information. Right. Mm-hmm. It's just now it's becoming, I think because it's delved into certain neighborhoods where it wasn't before, now it seems more issue. But, 20 years ago, I shouldn't tell my age, but 20 years ago, people were still writing prescriptions for this stuff like it was going out of style. And then you have the business aspect of it, because people were getting this stuff and selling it, but until more recently, the problem was I could go to 5 different doctors and that last doctor wouldn't know that some other doctor wrote this stuff. Now we have ability to find that out. I can go hit a button on my EMR and I can look and see what prescriptions this patient had. So if I see a bunch of some Percocets or whatever that I know they just had filled a week ago, then that's helping me to be able to decipher that.
At our last annual Old Dominion Medical Society convention, we had a topic on opioids, okay? And so this whole topic was talked about. Congressman Bobby Scott was in the room as well. But I shared this particular story about our dog. We have a little Westie who has anxiety attacks, doesn't want to get in the car. So we took the dog to the vet. My wife took the dog to the vet. Come home. I said, what happened? What's going on? The veterinarian gave our dog a 3-month supply of Xanax. Okay, now that's not an opioid.
Yeah, I know.
But still, I don't know what other drugs are being dispensed. So drugs are being dispensed, not just by physicians, but healthcare providers are. And it's a tragedy.
Yeah. And unfortunately, so I know some doctors do fold under the pressure, of a patient that really kind of gives them grief. Now myself, Dr. Quarles and definitely Dr. Britt, I don't think we fold under much pressure at all. No. But there are a lot that do fold under pressure and I've had to go toe to toe with patients who want narcotics for something. And I'm like, oh, time out, dude. Your surgery was 2 years ago. I said, if you're having that much problem now, there's a deeper issue than just giving you pain meds. I mean, so we get the people bypass surgery.
Britt,
whatever.
you have because you do surgery and there is that pain factor that is major. I mean,
but we also have a limit. And we have no refills.
Right.
And I also know the extent of, again, people have different verbal as far as pain thresholds, but I don't extend it. See, some patients, if you extend it, they stockpile these drugs, and then they share them with their friends.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Which does happen a lot more than you'll know.
And insurance companies now, I never have like this 3 months. I understand 3 month supply for medications. Now, I can understand certain medicines that are benign.
Like my blood pressure medicine,
Yeah, your blood pressure medicine, and you're going to use it. You're not going to abuse it. You need it. But some of these, I mean, it's just giving
prescriptions
too
just
much
to be
money.
given.
Yeah, too many prescriptions.
Let me ask you guys one other question about the, because this is also something new came from the Trump administration, the whole idea of the Medicaid work requirement. Just curious as to your personal thoughts about that. Because since we know that the majority of people are poor
there
who
are
receive
10
Medicaid,
states. There are 10 states that have decided, and they're about in terms of making Medicaid patients go back to work in order to receive Medicaid, and that's wrong. Now, number one, if you're on Medicaid, and the only folk that they won't make go back to work are those who are disabled. But how do you determine who has to go back and who doesn't? And then when you go back to work, you're now going to make more money. And if you can go to work. Now, most people who are on Medicaid, they say are working
people. Yeah.
You know, and they're not disabled. And they're not malingerers. They're trying to paint a brush that people on Medicaid are lazy. And who are they going to depict that way? And who are they going to choose to have to go back to work? And when they go back to work, now they won't be able to get Medicaid because they're above that poverty line. So it's a slippery slope. It's a terrible thing.
Quarles. I think it was misguided.
Yes.
So you think it was a misguided rule, and the states are picking up on it?
Well, I tell you what I'm finding this more interesting. When you really take this more in a global perspective, you know, we talk about the prescription drug prices. We talk about the set prices being set, which increases healthcare costs. So then you say, okay, then they say, the Congress says, okay, we want to cut Medicare, we want to cut Medicaid, but yet the things that drive the prices up so high, we're not addressing into that. You know, I mean, when you really think about it, it's kind of, this is why I say the business part of this, and back to Dr. Britt's point, how the business part of this, we've gone down this path, which is the wrong path to go. You know, it's all goes, okay, we don't want the federal government to pay money into these insurance programs, which the drug companies and the insurance companies raise these prices to make you have to. And
in Medicare, there's no negotiating on the amount of the drugs. So,
but that lack of negotiation is not because they can't, but the Congress won't allow that. So, you know, they set these. It's kind of this crazy
and the
rule
sad thing
system.
about it, we have enough money in the health care system to manage everyone.
Yeah.
But it's maldistributed. You have $80 to $100 billion lost a year just in fraud. You have $1 out of every $3 squandered away on unproven devices and interventions.
He's telling the truth.
All of it adds up.
Well, it goes back. All of it goes back to his initial point that we've gone down this path of the business of medicine. You know, and it's kind of unfortunate because, you know, they'll tell me as a cardiologist or as a private practitioner, I have to have like EMR, electronic health records, which I like, but it costs money to have electronic health records. So then you have to pay for the actual product, the cost of the the maintenance for that, not including your IT costs.
And you got to have training.
Yeah, and you have the training. To be honest with you, that's a drop in a bucket considering. But the thing is, everything is geared. Every piece of equipment I have. Here comes some guy trying to sell me a maintenance contract. I'm like, guy, listen, man. I'm okay. I said I've already done the calculations.
So when Pat King Jones puts together a gala to support scholarships for kids going into medical school, when we keep hearing over and over that particularly minorities are not going to medical school anymore, is it all because they look at you guys and go, it's just too much?
No, what they see that when they finish medical school, they owe close to $200,000. When they finish their residency, they might owe $350,000
because all the interest is accumulated.
They have to pay back. So what happens is those students say, "Look, I can't have that sort of debt burden."
Right,
and he's telling the truth on that one, and that's where I said the whole system. I mean, Dr. Britt was absolutely right. The whole system is flawed. I mean, it has to start the government has to say, okay, we're going to stop all this nonsense, and we're going to look at these prices and all these regulations that allow them to pay, to charge so much money. I mean, it has to start somewhere.
All right, we got 3 minutes left.
Okay.
Dr. Britt, I'm going to let you have 1 minute to say
we
what
also have to educate our public. I'm going to use my 1 minute to say this. We can't have Uncle Leroy, much as you love Uncle Leroy, who's 98 years old with all organs failing, no chance to leave the ICU, no chance to get back to baseline. We can't spend $1 million on him in the ICU.
Yeah.
And
those are some tough
And our public needs to understand. Because I can tell you, Uncle Leroy, you won't find 98 years old Uncle Leroy with all organs failing in Switzerland, in France, in England in the ICU. But for some reason, we feel we need to use urban bell and whistle. We need to be a little more vigilant in our resources.
And on that note, we want to thank you, Dr. L.D. Britt, for joining us, Brick House Scholar and surgeon with EVMS. Thank you so very much, Dr. Britt, for spending time with us. We appreciate you. Dr. Quarles, you got 1 minute. What do you want to say to folks about medical care?
Well, as far as the conscience and religious freedom, as a caregiver and as a physician who cares for my patients, I leave all my conscience and my religion out in the hallway. I go in and we have a great interaction, and you are my patient. I love you, and I want you to get better.
Thank you very much. That's Dr. Frederick Quarles, who is a dermatologist with Virginia Dermatology and Skin Cancer Center. Thank you so much for joining us. Dr. Newby, you got the last word.
Okay. Well, I just think going back to some of the points made earlier, I think public awareness, but not so much. I mean, as important as public awareness is public intervention. We have to get out there. We have to, again, go vote. We have to make our voice heard. We have to let people know these are the challenges we're having, and it's no longer tolerable anymore. If we can start our focus on that, I think we at least have a chance to start seeing some improvement in our healthcare system as a whole.
Okay, so now you got your wish. You got to talk about politics and medicine at the same time. And we will have you back next month, and we will be right back. And welcome back. Contemporary artist Clayton Singleton is known for creating paintings that inspire, educate, and motivate. As our Lisa Godley found out, his vibrant, powerful images draw you in with colorful, symbolic imagery and keep you there with their depiction of the human experience.
It was like 2 a.m. in the studio. Barclay Sheets, the professor, had told us that we needed to be bolder or not bring him something that was just regular. This was like during college. It just hit me. I'm gonna use straight color, gesso, just use it straight from the tube. And I said, this is what I need to do, is paint these figures in these almost story-like ways. If a person is blue, that person's a person. If the person is green, the person's a person. You don't have to attach, or rather you can't really attach your baggage to that person. So that's what really got me going with these strong, bold, large-scale paintings that people just were like, oh, that's weird, I'm digging it though. Because if the paints aren't diluted, they're just what they are. And it's kind of like, that's how we as people want to be seen. It's just what we are, just who we are. So you don't need to alter me in any way to fit your palette. So that's what really got that going.
Clayton is just an amazingly spectacular, genuine person. And to have him as a friend or a companion, or to know him in any capacity, is a gift. He brings a lot of calm to people, and his foresight and insight into life things. It's just very helpful to people, and people are drawn to that. People are always like, looking for hugs or just want to share a story or want to tell him something, and it's just great to be around, just this awesomeness all the time.
If you had to put an emotion to that particular still, what would it be?
I like how he makes everything look real, and he uses his own shapes and stuff and makes it his own. Like when you look at his paintings, you can tell they're his. I want to be an artist, just like him.
Nurses Singleton has taught me that through art you can express your emotions in a free way.
I remember learning how to write in cursive, and my handwriting was horrible, so I had to practice a lot to make the letters look the way they needed to look, so I would just write. And so then it became like, let me just write what I want to say. People can sit with words, and they can read them and analyze them and come to a new conclusion. And I think that was attractive to me. No, this circle was not originally painted by me, but I replenish red paint regularly. I take spray cans, crayons, anything I get my hands on. Lipstick, nail polish, I once scraped gravy from a dog dish, saturated it, using red food coloring, replenishing red paint regularly. Everybody needs to make something. Everyone needs to use his or her innate creativity. And I feel like when you don't do that, you seek to destroy things, because you're not being creative. Like, it's in your spirit, it's in your molecules to create, and we should. Everybody needs to make something.
I like how all the artwork ties into everyday life and different things that you go through and the inspiration of it.
This piece right here is called Brothers. Though it's not actually a painting of my brother and I, it represents us.
I love the colors. I'm all about colors anyway, but the colors allow you to really see the main focus.
Every person needs to make something, whether you grow it, whether you sew it, whether you sculpt it, paint it. I don't care what it is, whether it's dinner or whatever. Make something, create something that did not exist before you. That's powerful.
Wow, that ended quickly. I wasn't expecting that. Clayton Singleton and other stories on local artists can be found on Curate, which is heard on WHRO TV 15 on Friday evenings at 8:30 p.m. So tune in and check out those types of shows. So we've had lots of food for thought for today with this edition of Another View on Health. If you'd like to hear it again, go to our website, anotherviewradio.org, and download the podcast. And you can also sign up for our eView newsletter. It's a once-a-week reminder of upcoming shows. Next time on Another View, the Claville Report. Attorney and political scientist Eric Claville joins us with analysis and insight on America's strength throughout the world under the Trump administration. And let me remind you again of the H2H Sweetheart Gala. That is the Heart to Heart Sweetheart Gala at the Hunger and Health Fundraiser. It is Saturday, February the 10th at the Sheraton Hotel from 7 until 11 p.m. It's a dinner and dance, and tickets are available. And for more information, you can call 757-436-2444. Our theme music was composed and performed by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Todd Washburn sat in today as our audio engineer, and Victor Bowen answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Thank you so very, very much for listening to Another View.